Budget Committee Workshop. Today is Tuesday, April 12th at 9 a.m. sharp. I want to welcome everyone that is online and everyone in the room. We've got a packed agenda today, and we do have a hard stop today at 3 p.m. So we need to get through today's agenda. Our first order of business. So should we go around and do introductions? How should we do this?
You can.
Okay, why don't we do introductions, and let's start at that end of the room.
Bill Bartline, retired county commissioner, port commissioner, and now budget committee member.
Erin Scarp, Tonaway County Commissioner.
Dave Yamamoto, Board of County Commissioners.
Doug Olson, I live in Pacific City. I also serve on a few boards, including Tillamook PUD and also our budget committee here at the county.
Mary Faith Bell, Tillamook County Commissioner.
Hi, I'm Mike Scott. I'm just starting my second 3-year term on the Budget Committee, and I'm the mayor of the city of Manzanita.
Rachel Haggerty, Board of Commissioners, Chief of Staff.
Sean Blanchard, County Treasurer.
Jeff Underwood, Information Services.
Tilda Jones, from the Tillamook Bay Flood Improvement District here, and I'm here today for the Shiloh levy under Rachel's budget.
Nonda Wall, I'm here with Tillamook Canine Rescue.
Okay, that's who we have in the room. So I want to again welcome everyone. I'm just looking to see who we might have online. That's fine. And so you can join this meeting virtually, and I guess the people that are here, I don't need to announce that because they're already here virtually. So our first order of business is to appoint a budget committee chair, as we always do during these budget hearings. Doug Olson has been our past chair for many iterations of this, I guess. But we're looking for a budget committee chair, and we'll open nominations.
I nominate Doug Olson.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second for Doug Olson. Any further conversation, questions, concerns? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Chair, I will turn this over to you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, everyone. We're at it again. Seems like this was only a few months ago, but I guess it's actually been a year. We'll begin and follow our agenda, and the next item is budget officer remarks, and the county's budget officer is also the county treasurer, Sean Blanchard, and so we'll give her some time initially to give us an overview or whatever she would like us to know and be aware of this morning.
So going into this next fiscal year, I think inflation is going to hit a lot of departments in their spending. We've seen fuel costs rise. We've seen employee costs rise. We've also seen, and I think you will hear throughout the next 3 days from multiple departments, the lack of staffing, unable to retain staffing, not being able to compete against outside entities such as private businesses to retain those employees. Our current budget is built in, fiscal year 22-23 is built in with a 3% wage increase or COLA, with a 5% increase for 6 months for benefits. The retirement plan has not been changed from the 35% of payroll, which it was last fiscal year. So that is something, I know we're working on the retirement plan that we're looking at. It is not changed for next fiscal year though. People were pretty conservative, not too many huge asks in this next fiscal year. There are some new employees that department heads are asking for. Some bigger pieces of equipment, but that's because they haven't been able to purchase them in this fiscal year because of lack of the parts pieces to put them together. The chips they can't get for the pickups or the heavy pieces of equipment. I know Public Works Director Chris Lady has had issues getting his pickups and equipment. They've been on back order for months. That's probably the biggest piece. Like I said, staffing, I think you're going to hear repetitively throughout departments.
So, Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Certainly.
So, Sean, those that have budgeted items from the current fiscal year, especially vehicles and equipment, things of that nature, if they aren't able to be received by the end of the fiscal year, past fiscal years?
They do carry forward and become part of the beginning fund balance of those departments.
Any fund balance, okay.
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you for that. Okay.
I know, I do have, surveyor has requested a pickup for this fiscal year. It's still on order. And so he's put it in for next fiscal year. It'll just roll over if that expense doesn't come out this fiscal year.
Okay.
The sheriff, I know, he's tried to obtain quotes and is not even unable to get quotes for vehicles at this time.
Yes, we are in unusual times.
Yes.
Could you differentiate a little bit between special funds and the general fund? Recognizing that there's more discretion with the general fund, and this committee can exercise some of that discretion, and that seems to be more variables with respect to timber revenue and all of that. Special funds have other sources of revenue. So partly for our audience and partly for all of us, could you speak to the two and how you're looking at them and what might we see?
So special revenue funds, they have to be in balance. Their income needs to meet their expenses, and they cannot go over their expenses. Generally, like with the library, they're tax based. So with their property taxes, what they bring in income, that's what they choose to expend. Public Works, they receive state gas tax. There's also some federal dollars that are received, but they cannot expend more than what they receive in a fiscal year. So during the year, several spot checks between me and department heads as far as where they're at, where they're projected to be going, so that they don't overexpend. And in the past, I know that there's been a few departments that have received transfers from the general fund. General fund received timber revenues and property taxes. Those are probably the two biggest revenues that the general fund receives. Obviously, general fund doesn't want to overexpend what we receive in a fiscal year, and cannot, by budget law, do that. But there's also the departments within the general fund that bring in funds such as grants, fees, fines, and the like, to help offset their costs of those departments. I don't think off the top of my head I can come up with a general fund department that isn't supported by property taxes or timber revenue.
Could you offer a comment on the status of the general fund? How much are we out of balance going into this? From what I saw, it's not nearly as bad as in past years.
It's not nearly as bad, but I think that's because a lot of projects and one-time purchases are being utilizing the American Rescue Plan funds. We're not using the American Rescue Plan funds for staffing or people. These are just one-time project funds, and being able to implement some ideas to, streamline processes within departments, or I don't want to say bump up, but what's the word I'm looking for?
Efficiencies?
Thank you. Efficiencies, but those one-time costs are being funded from one-time funds, and so they're not being asked in departments' general funds. Does that make sense?
Other questions of our budget officer?
Mr. Sheriff, if I may?
Yes.
So I know timber revenue is an essential portion of our budget.
Mm-hmm.
I know because of one of our major businesses closing down this year,
Yeah.
there were timber harvests that maybe would have occurred that have been put off.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think our income from timber revenue is down a little bit this year over what it should have been.
I think last year I bumped our timber revenue down,
Okay.
and I believe that we are going to hit our projected budgeted amount.
Okay.
I did bump it down for next year also, because of what you're alluding to. There's the road building had to be contracted again, probably at a higher expense than what the previous contractor was doing. So I think those sales are going to be out a few years more, but I think the revenue will eventually come in. Just may take a year or two.
So you bumped down the current projections for timber revenue in 22-23.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it's a possibility that we may be doing a little bit better, but yeah, I agree with you. We're not sure when that money
No.
will be realized.
ODF, the last projection I had, the projection that they sent me for this current fiscal year 21-22 was 22% down what they had sent me this time last year as far as what you should use for your budgeting. And I didn't believe their projection last year, which is why I moved ours down last year, because I didn't agree with it.
And so you've been passing this information on to all the special districts. Because
Correct.
again, when the county receives all this timber revenue, and it can be a goodly amount of money, people think, wow, the county's rich, what are you gonna do with all this money? Well, 75 to 80% of that money goes immediately to 20 special districts within the county. They utilize that money that gets sent to them from timber revenue from the county for their budgets, and so they need to also realize that timber revenues may be down a little bit, at least for the short term.
I have sent them 2 projections so far this year in the last month.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, so now we're a bit ahead of schedule, and I guess if it's okay with everyone, we'll go into the county clerk. And I believe she's on the line, if I read the line correctly. Cassie, are you there? There you are.
Good morning.
Good morning. Go ahead, you're on.
Okay, so with my budget this year, you won't see very many changes. We're mostly status quo. This budget year we're in now, we did have some more revenue come in. Recordings were up. Not sure where that's going to go this next year, if the market's going to go down or not, but we shall see. We also had some more collections funds that came in, and we also did more passports as well. So we'll just see how the market goes with those types of things. I did ask for some, as you were speaking of being short-staffed, I have had a couple of people who have left my department, and the reason that they were talking about leaving was the other jobs that they applied for, they were getting more money. So I am working with HR and Sean for reclassifying my office specialist dues. You'll see that I indicated that in the budget. That way, hopefully, the good folks that I have, I can keep when I get them hired in the office. So you'll see the personnel costs that I'm looking for. We also had Helion, which is a program that we use for our reporting system, BAFTA Dog, and our receiving system. They did increase their fees, and so I did move some of those item lines up to cover that. You'll also see the Clerk's Records Fund, which is basically a fund by law that allows us to take a small percentage of recordings to do projects for older records, conversions, anything to sustain records that we have in our office. So you'll see there's an amount in there that I'm hoping to do another project this year to get some older records on our system. And so in our office we have the elections, reportings, BAFTA, DOG, Clerk's Records Fund, and then we do collect money for the PLCP fund, which goes to the surveyor for our county to help their budget out by law. And I know that Nanda is there today, but I believe she wants to maybe talk about the dog budget, which all the years I've been in charge of this department and that budget, it usually gets spent by other folks, not me. We sell the dog licenses, and so usually Sean, kind of, or the treasurer, usually, kind of keeps an eye on what other items come out of that fund. So I think for the most part, that's a pretty brief summary of what we do in our office. Is basically mandated service. We're just going to keep on keeping on. And we do a couple things, which is passports and notaries. Anything that's filed or recorded in our office, we will notarize. A few others, and so those are extra funds that come into our department that we do that are not mandated, but I think they're a fabulous service to the community, and so we'd like to continue those. And other than that, I'm happy to answer questions or discuss anything.
Chair, on the dog licenses, that is extremely low. Are we not doing enforcement on those?
So, Bill, as you know, in the past, we had a dog control officer that we had a contract with the city of Tillamook, and that went away. And we had collaborated really well when that happened, and then that contract went away for whatever reason. The background, I'm not exactly sure. If it was the city of Tillamook didn't have the personnel and that type of thing. Also, in our office, my chief deputy and I had tried to work very hard to build that program up when all of that was happening. And at one point, I was told directly by the county commissioners, we were sending out reminder notices to folks who own dogs. I was basically told by the commissioners, why are we doing that, and we don't need to do that any longer. So I quit doing that since I'm following the ordinance the commissioners put in place, and so I felt if I'm directed not to send those notices, then I won't. So you will see those numbers are down. Also, I talked to Nick Troxel at the city of Tillamook about this also. Their numbers are down as well. We had hoped to have a meeting last week at the board briefing that we weren't able to schedule for everyone to come to the meeting, but I believe we're going to have one soon, and we can talk about the fact that we need to amend our ordinance, which I had requested in 2016, and that didn't happen. And then we could work through some of these details, and I know Nanda has questions about funding and the whole program. So I think it's time to revisit it, and we can move forward with figuring everything out.
Yes, because if we're not going to enforce it, there's no reason to have the ordinance.
And I believe that the sheriff would probably like to weigh in on that, as well as I know that Officer Troxel and I had a discussion about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So am I wrong? This isn't some sort of dog control, isn't that a mandated service of the county?
Well, it falls under the ordinance that we have for the county. I don't know that it's actually mandated. I know that other county clerks within the state are not the folks who actually sell the dog licenses. I did some research to be ready for the meeting that we were, going to have last week, and it's a lot of nonprofit more that the county has doing those, like animal services through Multnomah County and things as such like that.
And so just so everyone knows, we will have a discussion about with K9 at our board briefing a week from tomorrow, correct? Yeah, okay. So we will take this up before we
Can I
go.
interrupt? I think has that been moved, Tessie, to May 4th so that they could attend?
Oh,
Yes, May 4th.
sorry, I stand corrected. So May 4th, board briefing in the afternoon, starting at 2 o'clock. We'll have our discussion about our dog issues. And so, Tassie, can I ask you to look at state statutes? For some reason, I have it in my mind that that's a mandated service.
I sure will, yes.
Thank you.
Other questions for Tassie? Yes.
Tassie, it's Mary Kay. You were saying that you used to send out notices to remind people to renew their dog licenses, and I wonder if we, in the May 4th meeting, we can discuss starting that up again, because I guarantee we would get more compliance if people were being reminded annually that it's time.
So I should reiterate that. We were sending multiple notices. We are sending one notice in either the end of December or the first part of January to the folks that we do have licensed. So we are doing that. We were doing a couple more than that, and I was told by the commissioners to quit doing that a couple of years ago.
Okay, all right. Well, that was before my time, so yeah, I don't know what the reasoning was for that, but I was just thinking that if I'm sure that the one notice is helpful, that, you know, to remind people, oh, it's time again.
Yes.
Can I ask a question about dogs? We have a lot of dogs in Tillamook County. Do we have any idea what percentage are actually getting a license with the county?
I don't know the percentage, but I'll just say not very much percentage is actually licensed at this time.
So you
The whole
mentioned,
time that I worked here, we bought only 2,000 licenses a year. And when Christy, my chief deputy, and I were working the program, there was a couple of years when I was concerned we were going to need to order more. And when I was asked to, you know, when we had not having the contract with the dog enforcement officer, and it went to just the city police and the sheriff's office, among the many other things that they do, it has made that enforcement kind of go away as it had been. And so, therefore, that's one of the puzzle pieces to how many we do sell.
so Tassie, you mentioned it would come due again around the first of the year. In other words, it's not 12 months. So if someone wanted to license his or her dog in November, would you prorate it then just till the end of the year?
Yes, there is the prorated fees that are figured out. And when the ordinance was revisited back when Paul Levesque was here, and we did a survey of what the fees are that we charge, and tried to do it like other counties. I think Multnomah County was where we ended up matching fees up with the licenses when we looked at this last time. And yes, it's a yearly license that we do for Tillamook County at this time, and prorated July 1 through the end of the year. And there's regular.
Could you do it if you did a 12-month cycle? In other words, if someone bought a license in September, would it be good until the following August 31?
Well, you could do that. However, it would be a little less easy to manage in our department. We would be sending reminder letters at different times of the year, and it would be, if we had that, it would be nice to have something that automated those. We don't have that now. We basically run a report to send those letters out at certain times. So I think it would be a little bit more difficult to manage for us.
It seems like it would be the opposite because you'd have fewer letters. They would just come up as a routine matter every 30 days. But you know, I don't know. I'm just asking.
Tassie, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is it just Tillamook County residents, or are there second homeowners that are registering their dogs over here because our fees are less than, say, out in the valley?
I would venture to guess that it's probably not hardly very many second homeowners that are licensing their dogs right now. There would be a few, yes, but not very many.
Okay, I just wondered.
Other questions for Tassie?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Tassie, it looks like for recording, we put the same amount in as last year, but we are already exceeding that by quite a bit, and I realize that we want to be conservative, but it seems like we may have been overly conservative in our recording fees. Is there a reason that we didn't recognize that we, actually are doing pretty well this year? We're already at 218,000 with 3 more months to go when we're averaging when I looked at it last, 24,000 a month. We had 22,460 last month. Just seems like we've shot really low of our reality.
And we did that, and we had this discussion, and Sean felt comfortable with the number that we plugged in.
So we have the ballot measures that are. Oh, you're talking recording, not
I'm
election.
talking about
Sorry,
recording.
Recording.
I'm about recording. It just seems like we shot kind of low on that.
We can bump it up if you're comfortable with that. I can bump that up.
I say as we get to the point where we're taking a look at what we have to cut in order to get through this, I think we have shot under that, and I think we might wanna take another look at it.
Okay.
Commissioner Scar, I will let you know that the numbers are starting to go down now. So I'll give you just from January of 2021, there were 913 recordings. This year in January, 731. In February of 2021, it was 850, and in 2022, it was 678. Last year in March was a big number. We had 1,101 documents, and then this month we had 799. So the numbers are just slowly starting to go down. I know Jackson County had already indicated in February, theirs has been down for over 6 months, if not more than that. So I'm happy to do whatever you guys are comfortable with doing. I know in all the years we've tried to be a little bit conservative to make sure we're, not going out there rogue. But so whatever you guys feel comfortable with, I'm happy to put that number in and hope that it sustains.
Thank you.
I would agree with Commissioner Scar. I think that makes sense. Put that on the list of things that could be modified when we get to that point in the general.
Can I ask one more
I
question?
should
Yes.
I should indicate as well, the hospital has put liens on folks that they are required by law to do, and they have not been satisfying those liens, which we pointed out to them over time. And we have been talking with them recently, and there is a plan. I believe they plan on going and drawing up documents to record those. They have not come through at this time, so whether it would be in this budget year or next budget year that might happen, that could, bump the numbers up to, the recording fees. But if they end up doing that and that ends up happening, there will be that. So we've been trying to work with them to get that taken care of.
So my other question, Tassie, and I'm just gonna ask everybody this because I'm curious, are you currently fully staffed in your department? And how many
I am
positions
not.
do you have open?
Well, so let's just say that right at this moment, we only have 4 positions on our department, which it was cut several years back where we had 5 for a long, long time. It was felt that we could do it with 4. We're doing it with 4. Well, I'll continue this, what I'm going to say, but we're doing it with 4. But I'll tell you, it's not been fun. It's been very stressful and a lot of work on the folks that are here. And I get concerned for fatigue for all 4 of us.
So do you have 4 people? But you do currently have 4 people in your department, or do you have an opening? Sorry, my question maybe wasn't clear. My question was, do you have a vacancy out of your 4 positions?
Yes, I have a vacancy right now. I had a gal who had started here. She was here for 8 months, and someone reached out to her with a job for more money, and so she went ahead and left. She said she loved working here in the job, but the extra money was going to help her and her family. So she left, and so we do have the vacancy, and I do have other staff members in my office that will be out on family leave. So we will be even more shorthand, and hopefully we can get the new person hired and start training. And it's a lot of different things that we do, because we cross-train for the new people to come in, and so it makes it a lot.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I was going to ask a similar question to Commissioner Scar. The 4.0 that you're showing have had for a number of years, and I remember some of your impassioned pleas to take it up to a little higher number. What is going on in your business across the state with your colleagues in terms of the salary position of Tillamook County versus other opportunities?
Well, throughout the state, that you would hear the same things that you're hearing from me. Everybody is short-staffed, they're fatigued, there is, since there's always new statutes that go into place, such as postmarks are gonna now be counted for ballots, which is a whole nother process and a lot different workflow for counties. I know that several clerks were doing some surveys about what each of the positions within our offices make, and I was hoping to get that from the folks who were completing that. As I gave them my information, they said they would share at some point, so I'd be happy to get that to all of you. As far as I understand, HR is doing a classifications study of different wages, and so I'm hopeful that will have some benefit to, the folks that we have within the county. And as I said, I'm working on reclassification of my office specialist 2s. I'm hopeful to get them to be reporting and elections technicians, and have them be as similar as across the board as the assessment tech that they have in the tax and assessment office, which I feel like is an equal to or like position, other than the fact that their specific expertise is in assessment and taxation, where ours is elections and recordings. There are a lot of retirements that are happening in clerks' offices across the state and the nation, as burnout is happening with the climate that we're in, the mis and distrust that there is in the election world, and more things that keep being added to what you have to do, and legislation, and people are burnout and done.
Thank you. I'm sure this will come up again when we get to the HR portion, and I know the county has had comp studies off and on now for some time, and this particular committee has asked for some in the recent past, and I think some of it's been done, some of it hasn't. We'll probably have that conversation later in the week, but I'm just curious, and so it's part financial, part burnout, and when people do leave, are they going to a similar position, or are they going over to the private sector, or could you say?
I've noticed that there have been some movement within the county from one department to another, as well as private. There's both of those things happening.
Okay, thank you.
I will say that I just recently, there's a job opening in Washington County for this position only, does elections only, and this position makes way more than I do, and I do elections recordings, BAFTA, dog licenses, county court journal, and this person's not the clerk. They only do the elections management. So, I mean, I could drive back and forth between here and there and make more money working there. I know several years ago I had said I could go do the same thing in Jackson County, do just the elections management and make a ton more money. The county clerk there said I could move in with her, and the sun shines there like, well, behind me the one day until so it's comparable. Of course, they do have more registered voters, but it's still, following the same statutes and guidelines for elections and recordings, basically. So it would be interesting, this study that I received from these other counties, that I'd be happy to share.
Thank you. Other question, Bill?
Sure. I don't know if we've gone into expenditures yet in your department, but the amount for contracted services under dog for $32,000, is that for the animal shelter?
I'm going to turn that over to Sean specifically as
I'm gonna ask Nanda to come up and speak to that, because I know she's here specifically for that. And I believe she has a short presentation for you as far as the Tillamook Canine, what they've received.
Presentation, but, yeah.
I think I've got an email too.
Nanda. Nanda.
And this is where the presenter sits, so that you face that, but you're not on camera.
That's better. I could read a letter, but we've just presented to one of the board workshops, so I know the Board of Commissioners is familiar with our situation, that we've been underfunded for several years. I work with Tillamook County,
We need
Tillamook
one
Canine
more
Rescue.
copy here, please. Here we go.
I work with Tillamook Canine Rescue, which is located right out here across the way, just past the officers' mess hall. So in 2015, Sheriff Andy Long, along with several of us, just were working to get an additional animal facility outside of the Tillamook Animal Shelter. They were still up at the dump at that time, and it was difficult for officers to bring dogs in during the evenings or have somebody meet them on site, and it was a real problem. So dog control is a pretty important part of any county function, animal control. So we did several years of work, took an old Jeep garage out there, pretty much tore it down to the foundation and rebuilt it. Sheriff, Deputy Jungling, Dave Jungling, worked with the sheriff's inmate crew, so they built that thing from scratch up. He built 8 kennels, brought in a Conex box. So we started pretty small, just with the thought in mind that the deputies could bring dogs in at any time of the day, 24/7. So we just put a key code on the door. They can bring the dogs in, put them in a kennel, give them food and water. Nobody has to be there to let them in. It's been working really well. We've gone through several managers, but we're at a point now where we're pretty solid. The funding is an issue because initially we were getting $18,000 a year from the county, and then we were getting 10, and which is what we're doing now. But as you can see from the budget in front of you, that's not cutting it. So I am here today to ask for a budget, a firm budget for the next fiscal year, plus April, May, and June, the end of this year, because we're pretty much ready to close our doors. We did get a really nice grant from PUD. It was a part of the community grant. Just got that, and so we're able to put in a laundry facility, which was at the request of Sheriff Brown, because of COVID, his inmates are 50%. There's no more inmates. We were initially set up to do the laundry over at the jail facility. The inmates would do it, and we'd go pick it up. Well, he wants us out of the jail because his inmates are so low that now his officers are actually having to do our laundry while they're there in the evenings. So, hoping that we can get this budget passed. It's pretty well line itemed out. I don't think it's excessive. I think we need this number to continue to function. So, can I take any questions?
Mr. Chair? Yes. No questions, but I do have to disclose that I was a board member of Canine Rescue for a number of years, and it just kind of resigned recently before all of this started going on. I still do the bookkeeping. The major impact is that the sheriff had been subsidizing by doing the laundry, and so the county was actually paying for that through the laundry system. Now, Canine Rescue had to buy their own laundromat basically down there and set it up, and it was a substantial hit to the organization. This is a great organization, folks. I would give them, I know they're looking at what, 27, I don't know if the 32 is what the county's budgeted for Canine Rescue. Is that correct?
I'm showing 12. So am I looking at wrong page? Maybe I didn't print my pages out soon enough.
Contracted services.
For dog?
Yes.
In
Yeah.
dog, and it says
Dog.
32,000.
Okay, I must have not printed my new one out, so.
Because I would think,
1512 as well.
I see 12 for last year, 32 for this year requested.
yeah.
I printed out the wrong page on mine. So,
You want my page?
no, I don't want your page. Write mine in.
I like my page.
Sean, did you change that once there was the discussion recently, maybe?
I think
don't
I
know.
must have and not printed out a new page for me or you.
It
Right.
In both of my books here, it's the 32.
Okay, so I changed it, didn't print out my new page, but I gave the budget committee their new pages, just not you and I, Tassie.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
So if it's 32,000, I fully support it.
So there's 2,000 that's for something, that goes to something else, so I think I put in the 30 just to round. If it's not the full 30, then we can bump it down to 28.
2,000 that goes to the lease for the property at
Yeah,
the port, if
Yeah.
I remember correctly,
Yeah.
that little fine print that's at the bottom of
Yeah.
the page.
Yeah,
We're told to
lease.
say lease agreement 2,000 includes
Okay.
water and road fee,
yeah.
so I think that's what that other two is.
So yes, it's in there, and like Aaron was discussing, there's a possibility to bump up the recording fees, so that would offset
Yeah.
that expense.
Yeah.
And I think when we bumped Tillamook, the K-9 down to 10 in the first place, they had a good beginning fund balance at the time, and now with
They
the
did.
projects and improvements that they've been doing to support the services of the county, that beginning fund balance has gone away.
Sounds about right.
And I agree, I think the recording fees are low. I saw that too, but I thought, well, in the long run, we could go back to that. So yeah, it is time for us to do a whole relook at animal control in Tillamook County and licensing.
Can I interrupt? I might add that in this May 4th meeting, hopefully with Tassie and Nick Troxel, Nathan will be there, Chief Rao. I think we might take a whole new look at animal control in Tillamook County, working with the city and the sheriff and the Tillamook Canine Rescue. Maybe get us all on the same page as far as a program, which might help with the dog licensing, Tassie. I think we're taking a real positive turn, so.
So how much are you short this fiscal year between now and June 30th?
We have 3 months that we're asking for, April, May, and June at $2305.58 per month. So we'd like to finish out the year with the budgeted amount that we want for next year. We're asking for next year.
So it's about $7,000. I think she's had the increase in the fees so far this year that'll offset.
Anything else?
Not for me.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think we really have to pay attention to where we have county requirements that we hand off to others in the community, like Canine Rescue, and make sure that we're supporting them in doing so. My understanding is there's been a lot of fundraising done in the past as well to augment their services, but their services, if I also understand correctly, are really our services. So I think it's a time for us to definitely take a look at how we're doing, what we're required to do in the county, and the partners that we work with, and making sure that they have what they need to do the work on our behalf. So I appreciate Nanda bringing it forward, and looking forward to finding a good solution that the county pays our part, so.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I can guarantee, Mr. Chair, I can guarantee that Nanda has put in tremendous amount of free hours on this, and it's really a community service that's needed and appreciated.
And I think I forwarded what you had sent to me out to the budget committee of all the volunteer hours from different businesses and individuals that have put into.
Quite a list of people in the community that support us.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Hey, anything else on either dogs or I guess the clerk as a whole? All right, thank you, Cassie. Then I'm sure you'll be following along as we work through the day.
Thank you,
I will
Cassie.
thank you all for your time.
Okay, let's go to the county assessor, I believe is our next one. Is Denise online, or there she is?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Again, for the record, I'm Denise Vandekuvering. I'm the county assessor and property tax collector. Also, on this call with us, I have our chief appraiser, Lauren Kippen, and our chief deputy of assessment and taxation, Sandra Larson. So today we have, I have two budgets, the assessor budget and the tax budget. There are very minimal changes on both of these budgets. I have increased a few things minimally just to keep up with the costs that are increasing. And big thing I am requesting is I would like to get a new vehicle out of the Fund 131 Vehicle Reserve Fund. We've got two older, they're 2004 Ford Tauruses that are starting to get fairly costly to repair. And at some point, it's going to be too costly to repair. And I would like to request to get a new vehicle for our appraisers and other county staff to use.
I'm thinking back to when I was a commissioner, and those were old vehicles back then.
Right.
Well, it sounds like if you order one now, you might get it next year. That's true too.
How many vehicles do you have in total?
Total, we have four. We have the two 2004 Tauruses, and then I believe we have a 2017 Ford Escape and a newer Ford Escape, but I know it's been at least 2 years ago that we got that one. So we have four vehicles.
And are those exclusively your department, or is that part of a pool?
My department manages them, but they're used by the Veteran Services quite often. They're used by our county clerk during elections. So they're definitely available for other county staff to use if necessary.
And general fund vehicles are financed over a 5-year period. We'll decide how many vehicles we're getting in the general fund, and then I go out for one finance to finance them all at once. So it's not in the general fund. There's transfer to the vehicle reserve to pay those funds.
What kind of interest are we paying on the financing these days?
It's anywhere from 2.3 to 4.6, depending on the year and the year I go out and ask them to get it financed.
So, Mr. Chair, can I?
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask the same question I'm probably gonna ask of all departments. How many vacancies do you currently have in your department?
Currently, we have 2 vacant appraisal positions that we have a recruitment for at this time. We had a retirement recently of one of our most senior appraisers, and then shortly after that, we had 2 of our appraisers resign. And the reason they gave was they could not find a place to live, or they couldn't afford a place to live here. So I think with a lot of industries, the housing issue is a problem. And especially at the appraiser trainee level, I mean, it's nice because we do have the trainee, the appraiser 1 and the appraiser 2. It is a job that there is a means to advance, but we currently have 2 vacant positions.
Thank you.
I think we're gonna hear that particular comment more than once there. People can't find a place to live.
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
One question that's not related specifically to your budget, but have you seen an increase in new construction and property values in Tillamook County this year? Because it seems like our property taxes have gone up substantially over prior years, and it's an ongoing trend, more than the 3%. So has there been a large influx of second homes on the beach and those expensive ones that are adding to our tax rolls?
Yes. And to clarify, our assessed value for last year went up, I believe, 4.1%, which, yes, it's above the 3% increase. So there's been new construction. As far as real market values, I mean, we've all seen it. It's gone crazy. The clerk's office has seen it with the increase of recordings. The community development has seen it with the increase in permits. With COVID, I'm not exactly sure what is causing this, and I'm sure there's multiple factors, but I think with COVID and people being able to work from home, and I know I read a study years ago about most people that want to live within 10 miles of the beach. And I think there's the baby boomer generation that is getting older and retiring and wanting to live at the beach. I'm not sure, because we don't have the data yet, how the short-term rental business, as I call it, is affecting our market values. But yes, we're seeing it up and down the coast. I just read an article about Lincoln County, Clatsop County, and Tillamook County, and how much the prices have increased. It's stunning. Will that continue? I don't know. What I've heard from realtors is that everything, well, not everything, and I'm generalizing, but things have sold. So now when something comes on the market, it gets sold. And so there isn't a huge supply. So that increases the demand. I would also say that, I think 3 years ago, you could have bought a starter home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, for maybe $200,000. Now it's almost $400,000. So definitely something that not just Tillamook County is seeing, Clatsop County is seeing it, Lincoln County is seeing it.
I think that's true all over, at least down in the south end. In Nescoin, there was a period of time not too long ago where there were 0 homes on the market. And when one came on a Sunday, it was sold, I think, following Tuesday, and there were 20 offers. And the offers were like $100,000 more than what the asking price was. And that may be true. I don't know if in Manzanita you may be having similar experiences.
There are no homes for sale in Manzanita. One came on the market this weekend. The first home was up for sale, I think, in 6 weeks. And I'm sure it sold within an hour.
Yes.
And the prices blow your mind, and people are not taking out mortgages, they're making cash offers. That's how they get the house. They make a cash offer above the listing price to get the home. So the market is just so tight. It's just unbelievable.
I do feel, though, that one of the things we need to be aware of moving into the future is I think there could be a bubble coming in the real estate market. With interest rates going up, and who knows how far they're going to go up, we're going to see real estate sales slow a little bit. And again, with prices where they are today, boy, I just can't see how that's sustainable.
They don't keep going up forever.
They don't keep going up
They
forever.
never do. I hear people say, well, the rules have changed and it's not like the old days. No.
No.
Things go, it's like the stock market. They go up for a while and they go down for a while.
I agree.
But I don't, right now, I don't know when that's gonna happen.
We just need to be careful as we try to project into the future what our.
Oh, we went through this in 2008.
Great.
It's the same, we were all talking the same game back then. You know, how much the prices were going up, nothing was for sale, and it just blew up. So it's possible it can happen again.
So Denise, what is your cycle now of trending versus actual door-to-door inspection?
We are still actively going to new construction. We have done very little reappraisal. We just haven't had the staff or the time with the amount of the new construction, and then again, not having the staff. One thing I wanted to say, you guys kind of froze for a while, so I missed some of that conversation that Mike said, but he's right, things just stopped the last quarter of 2007, but you all probably know, and what we need to remember is we use the prior calendar year sales. We look at every sale that comes into the county, and review those sales if needed. And so we use those sales from the prior calendar year to trend the like properties for this coming tax year. So I think I've said this before also. In Tillamook County, we lag the state, but we also lag the rest of, it's built to, we're a year behind. We're looking at last year's sales to trend this year's values. So we're behind, and then, Oregon tends to lag a little bit from the rest of the country. So we will see, I'm sure we're gonna see trends on our market values that we haven't seen probably since 2003 and 4, when we went through that big increase.
Well, how much is the disparity now on average between the assessed value and the market value, would you say?
Well, on a residential property, I'm looking, it looks like it's the CPR, which is the change property ratio. So that number is calculated by taking all the real market values compared to all of the assessed values. That number is 67%. But that's a countywide generalization residential properties. It's not, my home or your home necessarily.
So if you had a more aggressive on-the-ground approach as compared with trending, would that generate more money for the various agencies? Or if so, how much? In other words, is there a cost-benefit ratio of some sort by adding more thorough inspections in person and so on?
Oh, definitely. I mean, and the training and, that's what we've come to you for the last 3 or 4 years about our succession planning and how we know there's retirements coming up of people that have been in this business a long time, and we know that a trained appraiser can probably do 3 times the work as a new appraiser. So yes, trained staff and more staff is going to add value to the roles.
Denise, I just want to tell you, so I'm co-chair of the ALC's Governance and Revenue Steering Committee, and we're going to start talking about property tax reform in Oregon. It's going to be a very difficult conversation, but my co-chair is Commissioner Jayapal out of Multnomah County, and she realizes that we've got some issues. It's the urban-rural divide. And this is something that, property tax needs to be a little more localized, we feel. So that's kind of the direction we're going to be taking on this. But I think we're going to need to talk, Denise, quite a bit about how you feel property tax reform should go. This is a long-term conversation, it is. But we feel it's time to start that conversation in the state of Oregon. So hopefully you're gonna pay attention, and I'll be weighing in with you.
Yes, and that's an ongoing conversation. But like we like to say, the assessors groups do look at that a lot also. But we like to say the good thing about our system right now is it's fairly stable. It's not keeping up with where we're at in the world right now, but it's better than it used to be. And we just have to be cognizant that anytime there's a change, you're going to have winners and losers. And you might think you're a winner, and you end up being a loser. So I'm more than happy to be involved in those conversations and talk about it. Because, with a lot of things seem like a great idea, and then when you get into the weeds, it's like, oh, maybe it's not. So we also want, like all government, a stable, consistent funding source that we can continue doing the jobs that need to be done to provide the money for the services that the citizens need. So that brings me to the CAFA grant, which I'm working on right now, which is a $400,000 grant that is due to the Department of Revenue by May 1st. So I've already talked to Isabel that I think she's going to put it on the board briefing or the board meeting for April 27th. And you know, that CAFA grant is something that was done, I believe, in like 88, 89 to provide a stable funding source for assessment and taxation and the whole process, distribution. So where I'm going with this is that if there's any, for that grant, I use the tax budget, the assessor budget, the treasurer budget, the BOPTA budget, and the IS support of our departments. So if there's going to be any major changes in those budgets, if you could let me know, you know, about those so we get an accurate CAFA grant.
So Denise, I'll just make one comment about that, especially with the IS department. I think you'll see as we go through these budgets, currently, there have been some changes in the way departments are charged for the IS services and equipment that they need. And over the past couple of years, our IS department has put out so many laptop systems in order so people could work from home, things of that nature. So these costs are now being charged to the appropriate departments, which is only the correct thing to do. So I think, and I'll turn to Jeff, I think the numbers that we currently have for internet services for all the departments are where they should be.
I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Okay, what else have you got under your request?
Look at tax.
Well, if we want to look at the tax, the only change that I have made was I added, we did get one telephone from the IS department to enable one tax person to work from home, which is not happening anymore. We have got everybody back in the office and nobody working from home. So the tax budget, it's really, you know, the same as last year. No changes. And the assessor budget, which is General Fund 1120, the minor increases that are in this budget are cost increases that we're aware of. So I'm not asking for anything new, anything more.
You know if there's any change in the ratio between straight receivables and what is actually collected in the same fiscal year? It used to be around 6% or something, and treasurer would probably know, or in other words, we're getting 94% on time, and then the 6 comes over the next period of time, the next 2 years, and then you have so there's a 5-year total cycle, that's the same, right?
Yes.
Okay. So is that, in other words, are people paying more promptly, or we still have the same numbers of full accounts in arrears roughly?
I think they're paying more promptly, but I'm just seeing it on not as much previous tax coming in over the last couple of years. It's been actually coming in as current taxes.
Yes, and I actually was surprised with that. I thought with COVID and what's happening in our world that we might suffer a little decrease in the collection rate, and no, it's higher than it was last year, which is higher than the year before.
Is that true across Oregon, would you say, or elsewhere? Or because I would, the reason I asked the question, it seems counterintuitive that with people out of work and the difficulties we had, that we would have fallen behind, but they're saying that's not the case.
I don't know about the rest of the state. Cassandra, if you want to jump in here, feel free. I do know that here, I agree. I know there's been personal property accounts that have been paid, that people have gotten the COVID money, CARES money. I honestly, Doug, thought it was counterintuitive also, but our collection rates are up from last year, which again is up from the year before. I think I see Cassandra. Oh.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, so one of the factors is over the past 5 years, our mortgage requests. So when our property taxes go out, we have lenders that request a statement, and essentially they're asking, can we get the statement to pay the tax? And over the past 5 years, that number has increased by 3%. So I think with the market, all of the sales happening and the lenders requiring that the taxes be included in their monthly payments, that in turn has helped our collection rate.
Thank you. Other questions on from our assessor, or for our assessor? So I'll ask the treasurer, do you see anything that needs a little more discussion in her request?
No.
So we're good to keep going.
I think maybe I could relook at the property taxes, and for the general fund, that could be bumped up a little bit.
I was gonna ask, because it looked like our actual was $7,926,147. Obviously not this most recent year that we're in, but the year prior, so.
And so far, we're over 8.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask about that, because it seems like we didn't, I think because of COVID, we were concerned that we wouldn't receive, and so we bumped our tax revenues down last year. But we haven't even gotten them up to what they were 2 years ago, and yet we're getting a really good collection. So I think that's, that would be on the list. Good job.
Already got that note down.
Good job.
I figured you did.
These were,
Yeah.
yes.
All right.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you very much.
Cassandra?
We'll move on and.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see here. We'll take a break here eventually, but we've got some time here. We're doing fine. Let's go to the Board of Commissioners now, and that would be Rachel. And this is an opportunity for the three of us lay people here to slash and cut and do all kinds of things.
We're in trouble.
Okay, Rachel, go ahead.
Okay, so I have 4 budgets I'm going to talk about of all my budgets under this time slot. We'll start with the Board of Commissioners budget. Fund 1100. The most notable changes here are we have a big drop in contracted services. Last year we had about $250,000 in strategic planning, some support for the city of Tillamook, wage study, retirement planning, feasibility study to explore a spinoff of the health department. So we had a lot of planning contracted services, which we don't have this year. So that's why you see a big drop down to $40,000 in contracted services. There's an increase in computer software and licensing. We have signed the contract for a new software to streamline and make more efficient our agenda creation, minute generation, and management of the live board meetings. And so we're expending the funds for the rollout this fiscal year, but there's an ongoing cost of about $15,000 every year. But we should be gaining in staff efficiencies quite a bit. So that's the increase in computer software. And then the other notable change is in staffing. So we currently have 7 FTE with 1 vacancy in our board assistant. And then the county council full-time position is going to 32 hours a week proposed, with some increases in the legal services line item to continue or to bolster that work.
So that's a pretty notable increase. That's over $100,000, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
As a contract service with not a corresponding decrease on the other side. So how does that work?
I was going to explain that. Yes.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
So the increase is about $118,950 in the legal support, and the most notable items, we always do have budgeted items there for legal services that support the county services department. But the big changes are an addition of $110,000 for 15 to 20 hours of Bill Sargent's time as a second county counsel, and then $20,000 in legal services to assist with the foreclosure process. And I'll leave it there, and I think Joel's going to explain further on this larger approach.
Morning, everyone. So, one thing I've been discussing with the board over the last couple of years is just kind of the evolving duties and expectations of the county council position. And one of the most notable would be in the risk management area. Serving as the county's risk manager, in addition to county council, was, when I first took over, a pretty manageable portion of this job. But with a few significant incidents we had, including the cyber incident right before COVID, and then with COVID, that responsibility has significantly increased. There's, we're just dealing with a lot more regulatory issues, and there's a lot more working with CIS on making sure we're being proactive in our risk management and keeping our premiums down. And we just completed a big audit, a risk management audit with CIS that we scored very well on. So, I think we're trending in the right direction. But that's been some significant changes, as well as we've had a lot of turnover within the county in key positions in the last few years, and have definitely been impacts there, as well as from what I'm seeing, as well as from what I'm reading, just in the legal profession, I think there's an expectation of increasing litigation in various areas as we pivot out of this pandemic. And some of the early signs of things like that can be increased public records requests and things like that, and that's definitely something that we're seeing. So what I talked about with the board, and I think what they wanted to see was developing an operational plan for the future that can cover future needs of the position, but also contingency of operations plans as well, because right now it's a one-person shop, and if I were to get deployed overseas or something, it would be it'd have a significant impact. And so what we've what I've worked with Rachel, what we try to put forward here is I think something that can cover that with and developing that operational plan is, I would say, multifaceted. One of the ways, at least in the more short term, 3 to 5 years, is I think incorporating Bill Sargent more. He only wants to come back part-time, but he does want to come back more regularly. And as everyone here knows, Bill is a wealth of institutional knowledge about county legal operations, and I think it's been challenging for him to just be gone for months and then just drop in every once in a while when I try to take some vacation time, or when I have active duty with the Oregon National Guard. So he would like, on a part-time basis, some more regular hours, and I definitely see the need for that. I mean, there's definitely plenty of work to keep him busy, and so that's something he has wanted to do, and that's something I fully support. As well as assessing what we utilize for contracted services. Ms. Haggerty mentioned the foreclosure litigation, and that's kind of the only thing that we haven't, at least in recent years, that's the only litigation we haven't really contracted out, but we had some significant staffing changes in the last couple of years that really impacted our ability to efficiently process that litigation, and so that among just what I expect to be an increase in litigation in the coming years, I think it necessitates looking at what we do with contracted services again, because I expect that to just be more of a need as we move forward. So the other thing that was mentioned is going to part-time, and you know that was in part to help offset some of the cost of bringing Bill Sargent back for more hours. I fully support keeping him engaged, because at this point, if he wasn't available, it would be very difficult or impossible for me to really take vacation time or meet National Guard obligations, things like that. So, you know, I'm a firm believer in that. I did get to a point the last couple of years with the COVID restrictions and everything. My job has been primarily operated virtually, and I got to a point late last year with some family situations where I decided that I needed that to continue. And so I started talking with the board last winter about options because I felt like for the last couple of years, things had operated well virtually, and that was kind of the direction a lot of positions within my profession were going. But there was definitely a desire to, continue to have a in-person council present, especially for public meetings and things like that. So as we continue to look at things and have discussions, there was, I was asked about, being willing to go to part-time to offset Bill coming in and covering in-person meetings, things like that. And in talking with Bill, I mean, he was happy about that. That's a part of the job he still really enjoys. And so, I was fine with that too. And so what's being proposed here is, I would go down to part-time. Bill would work 20 to 30 hours, 15 to 20 hours a week. His primary responsibilities would be things like covering in-person meetings and just kind of handling any kind of overflow. My primary responsibilities would continue to be handling all our major projects, day-to-day department operations, and again, Bill would be that in-person presence at meetings, cover, just kind of handle overflow. We tested this dual coverage model last month. It seemed to go really well. Didn't have any pushback or issues. That's, I don't know if that answers your question, but.
So, can I ask a
Yes, go ahead, Sean.
quick question, whether or not Bill Sargent meets the definition of a contractor?
That
Or-
was exactly my question. Is he coming on as an employee or contractor?
That's my question. Would probably be a deep dive with Aaron Frost, our HR director, to find out. Because if he doesn't have any other clients, technically it should be an employee by IRS rules.
Well, so I have discussed this with Aaron,
Mhm.
and Bill has operated as an independent contractor ever since he retired. So I don't think there would be any change to his agreement other than just the hours. Because right now the contract is set up to where basically he just serves as needed. So he only comes in basically when he's summoned. So I think that one of the main differences between Bill Sargent's situation, I mean, as a legal advisor, I do think I think he can operate independently, and that's something I've discussed with Bill too. So I think he can meet that definition, and I believe You know, he believes that as well, and my understanding is Aaron does as well. But I think one of the other big differences with Bill is that because he's only doing in-house counsel for the county, he's not required to carry PLF insurance, just like I'm not. So one of the challenges I know we've run into with other independent contractors, especially if they don't have a large client base, is they're not adequately insured. But since Bill is only operating as an in-house counsel, that's one of the positions that's exempt from PLF coverage through the bar. And so he maintains an active status with the bar, and he's continued
Is
to
he
do
do
that.
business as an LLC or an LLP at all, or just as an individual practitioner?
To my understanding, I believe he's an individual practitioner. The contract is with him and I believe his contract that we've had for the last 4 years or whatever, since he retired, I believe is with him as an individual, to my recollection.
I asked Bill whether he would prefer to be an employee or a contractor, and he said it would be, either one would be okay, but his preference would be to continue as a contractor.
Well, his preference may be one thing, but whether or not it's legal would be the other thing. So that was my question as to whether he could be considered a contractor or an employee.
Hasn't he been a contractor? This hasn't come into question before. Is it because now we would have set hours that it becomes a question? Or we just didn't think about it as this?
Probably didn't think about it because at the time he was just doing a small amount of fill-ins for Joel when, I guess my question is, does he have other clients? You know, is he considered a contractor? And that's fine. I don't have a preference one way or another. If he was an employee, I could track him and he could track his hours. You know, as a contractor, he has to do that independently. So I'm just asking the question.
I can touch base with Aaron Frost again, but I think he does meet the definition, and I haven't heard any concern from anyone that he doesn't, and we have had this arrangement in place for several years. I think just inherently an attorney giving legal advice does operate fairly independently, so that's because that's all, as Sean accurately mentioned, that's always one of the concerns with an independent contractor. Are they really independent, or are they just doing work that someone else is directing them to do and managing them, and so so they're really functioning more like an employee? But a lot of your smaller counties and cities use contracted services for their city attorneys and county council services. So I don't think we're outside the norm at all in that. And to my knowledge, we are his only client because if he took on private clients, he would then have to do PLF insurance. And to my knowledge, I don't think he's doing that. So he's an active bar member, but because this type of work is exempt from PLF, is basically malpractice insurance. Because this type of work is exempt, I don't think he has PLF coverage, which he's not required to do. I'm exempt too.
Sounds like a question that can be clarified for us, just to be certain that all parties are in agreement that it's a contract relationship.
Definitely, I can discuss that with Ms. Frost again and make sure we're all in agreement on that.
He's an employee.
Next question. In Manzanita, we contract out with a law firm in Portland. We don't have a city attorney, as you mentioned. And I find it interesting that you see that the risk management is becoming a bigger factor for the county. We had an explosion in legal services in Manzanita this last year for the same reason. Just stuff coming up and we're concerned about risk. We have to get a legal opinion. Where 4 or 5 years ago we didn't, but now we're kind of, so we're evaluating this thing too because the cost of legal services has now gone way up. And you're confirming that we're not alone, I guess is what I'm saying. But so the new person you bring in, you get paid. This county going to pay him by the hour as you call him in, or is he a part-time employee with a fixed rate, or how's this thing set up? I mean, the person we pay for, and the fact that we have a law firm in Portland, we have access to other attorneys, so a junior attorney can help and so forth if it's a bigger project. But we just pay them basically by the hour. They charge us by the hour, and they're independent from us. So.
They're an independent contractor.
Yeah, when we call them and say, hey, we got this problem, can you help us with it? And then they bill us their hours.
That's basically how the sergeant's arrangement has been structured since he retired. So, you know, there's no minimum amount of hours he had to work or anything like that. It's purely, you know, as needed. And as I said, that's traditionally been used so that I can take vacation time or when I had active duty obligations with the military. And I mean, one thing about Bill, you know, I don't know what your hourly rate that you're paying in Portland. I have a pretty good idea, and I'm sure it's increased pretty significantly in the last couple of years. And you know, I mean, frankly, for Bill's experience and background, I mean, it's compared to the market rates, it's
It's a really good deal.
It's a good deal. But yeah, I mean, just you know, what you alluded to, I would just say is kind of happening across the board. I mean, and not just here, not just in Oregon, but you know, just legal issues that I think a lot of us never thought we'd even be really wrestling with in our legal careers. The pandemic has brought to the forefront, and risk management has become so much more of an emphasis and an expectation from, you know, for example, CIS, our insurance provider. So it's just something we have to be a lot more actively involved in.
Well, for my part, I would encourage you, the commissioners and the treasurer, to make that crystal clear, only because we're in a litigious society, and if it's unclear at all, somebody would find another clever attorney, would find a loophole and come after all of you for one thing or another, and that's just the way it is. Like the PUD is much like Manzanita. They have contractual arrangement with Cable Houston, and then separately a labor attorney, and you just do it that way. But if you bring someone on, when I worked at Washington County years ago, they had 4 staff attorneys, probably have 5 or 6 now, and they were actually employees with full benefit packages and all of that, and their only client was the county. And they would handle land use matters and all of that came along. So there needs to be, in my mind, a fairly bright line on how you do that, just so that it's clear to everyone involved, including legal counsel, so that you don't get a summons and complaint on your way home and ruin your day.
Chair, if I may. So I've been asking Joel these questions. Matter of fact, I had a conversation with him just last week about clarifying exactly how this is going to work when you go to Mississippi, being our legal counsel from another state. And that's one of the reasons I see that our costs are going up substantially. I did ask Joel, this was a month and a half or so ago in a board briefing, you know, if he'd be willing, since he's moving to a place like Mississippi, which is, I mean, just so much less cost-wise than here in Oregon, if he'd be willing to take a pay cut in order for us to be able to afford all the additional people we're needing to bring. And so we are bringing on Bill Sargent on a regular basis. We are bringing on a legal assistant, legal aid, as it were. And I asked you to put that together so that we knew exactly what company we were going to utilize for that legal aid. And again, we haven't talked since then, so I don't know where we are with that. But when I mentioned if you would take a 20% pay cut, and I didn't ask for an answer then, I just said you need to think about that. And you did come back. And the last conversation I had with you, that 20% pay cut, now you're not considering yourself full-time, you're considering yourself part-time. And so the conversation went to Bill. I'm going to have to work out with Bill a schedule so that when you're not working as part-time, we have coverage at the county. And again, I don't think we clarified this enough, but I was thinking at that point that because the cost of living was so much lower in Mississippi and you're still getting full benefits from the county, that you would still be considered full-time, but apparently that's not the way you're thinking. So since the last conversation I had with you last week, I'm not sure our budget reflects the additional hours that Bill is going to be working because you're considering yourself part-time. And I don't know that. This budget was developed a month and a half, 2 months ago. So there's lots of questions to me, Joel, that are still unanswered. And I'm a little concerned about that. And you're getting ready to move in another month.
So I guess I'll try to address each one of those, let me know if I miss one. I guess the way I interpreted that, our conversation was, because if I remember correctly, you know, you were expressing concerns about wanting to have in-person counsel for certain meetings and things like that, which I completely understand. And, so, and we had talked about Bill Sargent, because doing, you know, in-person meetings is something he has a lot of experience in and still enjoys doing. I interpreted that as you asking me to
I apparently wasn't clear.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I thought we were talking about, you know, me reducing my hours, which would be a salary reduction, so we could give more hours to Bill, so he could cover in-person stuff. And, which as I said, you know, I'm fine with doing, but I guess that's because we were talking about, you know, having someone in person for, you know, that's what I thought we were talking about. So you know, and I'm fine with that. I mean, I as we've also talked about, I expect to be doing a lot of travel coming back here. You know, I'm going to stay in the Oregon National Guard as well. But you know, I just as you know, family reasons.
You want to go through all my questions, and I appreciate that. Let's stay on this portion of it then. So yeah, I feel in-person legal counsel is extremely important. And I think that's highly reflective of the last Oceanside Incorporation public hearing that we had, where you and Jerry Keene were at the same table, and as the commissioners were discussing all the issues, you two were whispering in each other's ears, and we finally came to an agreement on a mediated settlement. Not mediated, but
potentially still working.
Still working on that. Yeah, that's why I'm a little concerned about bringing it up in this meeting. But honestly, that would not have happened had you been in Mississippi. And this is one of the things that just concerns me greatly, especially on these public hearings, which are land use issues and very, very complex. So again, I just need to make that clear that I'm still a little uncomfortable with having you as county counsel in Mississippi. That's.
Yes, but you had a first Bill question.
Yeah, because that was one of the questions that I've been pondering, is how do you work with Sarah Absher on all of these public hearings when you need to be face to face on those? It feels to me like, I mean, it was so nice as a county commissioner just to be able to pop down to Bill Sargent's room or to Joel's room and ask a question, whereas now it's, you got to figure it out and send an email or call long distance. I would have some concerns with it working very well for a long term. It might work short term, but it could open you up to more litigation in the long run.
I certainly understand the benefits of that. I mean, I think what we've seen, especially over the last 2 years, is kind of a shift in how some of these public hearings are conducted, and with changes in the law last year, we're now required to provide virtual participation options in all of these meetings, including our commissioner meetings and our planning commission meetings. But you know, I think Sarah and I work together real well. You know, we've been doing either virtual or hybrid virtual planning commission meetings basically for the last 2 years, and I think those have went real well. I do think, you know, there's going to be those occasional meetings like the one Commissioner Yamamoto mentioned, which certainly was a very intense, very complicated legal issues, you know, which again, I can be flexible in making those kind of things happen, and I think as well as a lot of the preparation for those hearings that I do, which is not necessarily something you guys can or should be involved in, but you know, a lot of that is done behind the scenes ahead of time with the parties, with community development, things like that, and you know, that's something that I think has worked well for the last few years, and I think can continue to. But I understand the concern.
And so, Joe, I just need to make this public again. So one of the things that we talked about early on was, you know, you may need to be here for certain things, and you said yes, and you said that you would do that on your dime, the travel expenses and the housing expenses when you came here. But now that you're at part-time, is that something you're still willing to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be the occasional situation like Nigeria or something where, you know, I mean, I would obviously, you know, discuss it with staff, discuss it with Bill, but I mean, if needed, I am going to be coming back regularly anyway because, like I said, I was considering transferring or getting out of the National Guard, but they were very accommodating with that too. So I'm planning on, you know, coming back for them as well. So
again, Joe, the last discussion we had is I asked, commissioners have not decided yet, I don't think, that, you know, this is a done deal. So I asked you that we need to have a work plan of exactly how everything is going to work. And you said you would work on that, and we still don't have that. So it's got to be very detailed, transportation expenses and number of hours you're going to be working. We need to finalize exactly how much we're going to be paying Bill on a regular basis. We still need the company we're going to be contracting with for legal aid. And again, so we need to make a decision soon. You're moving again in another month. And we need to have it very clear in our minds, I think, if this is going to work. And I don't have that clarity.
Mr. Bell, you've been waiting patiently.
Thank you. Well, while it's true that we three commissioners don't all agree on supporting a remote work trial with Joel, it also respectfully is in the purview of the budget committee to decide that, or even to discuss it, say, we really need to focus on the budget.
There's $120,000 additional in this budget.
So let's talk about the budget. So when I talked to Bill Sargent about this, he said that it was his perception that what we paid, what the county pays him, isn't going to be very much more. So there's that, because you have willingly given up 8 hours, so you're willing to go to 32 in order to accommodate Bill working in person. So Bill absorbs the 8 hours, and then already we contract with Bill for all of the time you take off. And his perception was that it would pretty much balance out. We may add a number of hours, but not very many. He didn't think it was going to be very much more. And so, in addition to that, we have talked about adding services. So the contract services for the foreclosure, we've talked about adding services because the legal department is understaffed for what they're doing. So that doesn't have anything to do with whether or not Joel works remotely. That would be whether if he was here or not here to get it off of Isabel's plate. That the fact is that we have a one-person shop and we have far more work than one person can do. And we don't want to continue to dump it on Isabel. So that's a separate issue. And I'm outraged that you asked Joel to take a cut in pay. I would not support that for a minute any more than I would support asking anybody else to take a cut in pay. I think it was reasonable to ask if you're willing to work 32 hours. And I appreciate you bringing up the point about the risk management, which has become huge, and I think people just don't understand unless you're paying for it. What a big job that has become, that it is a job unto itself. And Sean and I were in a meeting recently with Aaron Frost and our labor attorney, Stephen Schubach, looking at the wage and comp study. And when we got to the legal department, we were talking about it, and Stephen said, "Oh, you've got risk management in that office, in a one-person office? That's a huge job." And so I just think I think we need to focus on the fact that for the last couple of years we have talked about a need to increase labor in the legal department, and whether we were gonna do that with employees or contract services, and that's what we're looking at now.
I'm checking, Sean.
So if you're referring to 32-hour part-time, full-time, 32 hours within the county is considered a full-time employee with full-time benefits. So that's how it's not necessarily a part-time. It is, Joel came and talked to me, it is reducing his hours by 8, so that does reduce salary. The benefits stay the same. So just to clarify on that, when you're talking full-time, part-time, it's not, 32 hours is considered full-time for benefits.
So for purposes of this committee, why don't we consider this? We have numbers before us that have some logic behind them. From my perspective, this situation is as much a personnel matter as it is a financial matter. So I guess I would suggest that the 3 county commissioners get this problem, take it back up again and get it resolved, not solved, but resolved. And then when we meet again in May, we can make an appropriate adjustment on the numbers if we have to, based on what you said. That's just my suggestion, listening to it. I don't think the 3 people in this room are in any position to talk about how legal services are delivered or offered or available. I have personal opinions on that, having worked way too many hours with attorneys over the years. No offense to counsel here. But that's a decision for the 3 of them in my mind, and then the financial side of it can come back to us in May. And if it's up or down, we'll deal with that as a bigger picture. Is that?
Mr. Chair, I would agree, but I would like a detailed breakdown of the 187,000 for legal, as to what that's going to go to.
Yeah, it's only a couple of budget items I could just give you now, or I could, it's 110 for Bill Sargent, 15 to 20 hours a week at $120 an hour. $25,000 for the Julian trust case, a couple of other minor, a couple $100 expenses for foreclosure related cases, $20,000 for the foreclosure, the new foreclosure assistance, and then $30,000 for potential cases that we always have in there that may come up throughout the year.
And what's Bill Sargent's contract for this year?
I think it's only $25,000, but his rate is $100. So he's asking for.
I thought it was 120.
His current.
Oh, his current.
Yeah, his current.
Okay.
His current rate is $100 an hour for as needed, and I think it's only $25,000. And so we're proposing to go to $120 an hour, 15 to 20 hours a week. So whatever that math comes, so 110,000.
And currently,
Wipe that smoke off your face.
I think that's a little better.
I'm keeping my mouth moving here.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I would just like to reiterate a little bit of what Commissioner Bell stated around what we asked County Council to do was to bring us a proposal that recognized the increase in the amount of work that has landed in County Council's office. And I feel that in this conversation, we've gotten to a bit of a point where we're suggesting that Joel being at 32 hours a week, that we should be able to do everything that we've always done without adding any additional counsel. And this is all on the crux of his 32 hours, that amount having to cover the additional counsel. And I want to be extremely clear that that was never the intention of what we asked County Council to bring us. We wanted to recognize the increase that came with the risk management. That was 2 years ago when we were still searching for a full-time HR director. Risk management was sitting there, and with the inability to fill that position, it has been with County Council. So I want us to be very clear, and I want everyone at the table to be clear, that we were not trying to come to a zero-sum balance in this. We were trying to assure that the county's legal needs and increasing legal needs are being met. So an increase is expected in this line item in order to meet the county's increased legal needs. So I really want to clarify that piece of it in terms of the conversation that we had to get to this point.
Mr. Chair, if I may. Joel, there's nothing personal in this. you know my stance on you moving to Mississippi, and that's a family issue, and I certainly can't get
Mr.
involved.
Chair, I don't think this belongs in this conversation, and may we return to budget and not talk about where Joel is going in a personnel issue. I'm extremely uncomfortable with having that as part of this conversation.
Agreed.
Okay, I'll rule as your chair on that. I agree with that as well, and I'll go back to what I suggested is the three commissioners do this either in executive session or open session or as appropriate, and then the financial side of it will come back to us in May. And I know, Commissioner, that you may disagree, but I think that will move us on, and we do have a public schedule as well. The only thing I would add to it, listening, if your attorneys are willing to work for $120 an hour, they're about $220 under the downtown Portland market as of the moment, for what it's worth. So with that, then, is there anything else you need to add with respect to that? Understanding that this will be a discussion again, the financial side of it in May, if not before, maybe even on Thursday as we close out, if there's anything to add to it in this session.
Nothing, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, what else do you have? Go back then to BOC here, board on Rachel.
Okay, so I don't have anything else under the BOC budget, so moving to Fund 105, this fund.
Can I ask a question on the BOC budget? So we do not have the next phase of wage and comp study in the BOC budget, is that correct?
We do.
We do have it in here, okay, I thought when you went through, you said that was one of the things that was last year that wasn't this year. We had it last year for the non-represented. Yes.
That is, I'm not sure where that is. And then we have it this year, but it's not as expensive for the union. So it's in here for $23,000.
AFSCME.
Thank you.
For AFSCME.
Yeah, for AFSCME. So
It's
we
in
learned how to
the
contract
narrative.
negotiation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so is that it then for BOC, or have you got other?
That's the BOC fund.
BOC
Yeah,
fund.
so the other ones are pretty quick. So Fund 105, this is the fund that supports the management of the State Forest Trust lands, and it's where all of our legal expenses have been coming out of for the Coho lawsuit and the Lynn County lawsuit, although those are waning. There's just a slight drop in the contracted services based on Joel's projection and working with legal services there. And we also pay for dues for CFTLC and the new Oregon Timber Counties Coalition. And so other important thing to note is these expenses come off the top of the timber revenues before they're distributed to the county and special districts.
And I will just add that we are getting a refund for the past 2 years from AOC on our engagement with the Federal Land Steering Committee, which is a subcommittee of the Natural Resource Steering Committee. We haven't met in 2 years, and so we have quite a process. So 2 years net will be coming back to the county.
Okay, moving on to Fund 100. This fund has supported the maintenance and monitoring of the Southern Flow Corridor flood mitigation and wetland restoration project, as well as ongoing maintenance of the Shiloh training levee or training structure mowing. We do that annually, both at the SFC site and the Shiloh. Funds here, we have, actually there should be an increase of $70,000 from the sale of the Jones property, so that is not in here. So our new budget should be around $128,000, which will make those changes going in May. So we want this to be a pot of money that is there for as needed purposes. If a culvert blows out, if we have some monitoring of a flood that we want to do. So sitting on $128,000 is a nice place to be. We are also, the Corps has not completed an assessment of the Shiloh training levee since 2016. And so we are, I'm going to be signing a contract today or tomorrow to have an engineer that Director Lady has identified and received a quote for to conduct an assessment by August during low flows to really assess what the actual repairs need to be. And once we have that recommendation, then we can decide how we might proceed with repairs. And that is all for Fund 100.
Do I speak now for the Tillamook Bay Flood Improvement District on the Shiloh, Chairman?
If you like, would you come up here, please, for that?
Thank you for your time. You have comments from the Tillamook Bay Flood Improvement District. I'm the staff person, Tilda Jones. And as you know, the cheese factory just invested in a brand new barn pole building. The Fred Meyer just had a grand opening after doing millions of dollars of updating. The Shiloh Inn is spending thousands, millions doing their update, and we have a new grocery store. That's what the private sector is doing in the area of the Shiloh levee. And the county's investment in that area is the Shiloh levee and protection of the properties and the people. And just like the businesses are updating, the Shiloh levee itself needs updating. 5 years ago, the Corps ranked the levee as minimally acceptable. And our district is very invested and has been for 23 years and in maintaining that levee to keep, to protect people and their property and their lives. So we are asking if the, and Rachel referred to this, and we support the $15,000 assessment by a well-qualified engineer that's worked in Tillamook. He's willing to come here and work personally with anyone that's interested. Our contractor wants to meet with him and do a thorough on-site report of the levee so that we know if there's an emergency problem there, that the levee has to be fixed immediately. And we do have a bid of up to $3.2 million if it has to be done immediately. Or it can be done slowly, or it can continue to be put off. And I hope we get support for that. And if it has to be done, the next budget item is the $300,000 for the engineering, whether it's put into the Shiloh budget or you have a contingency fund or an emergency fund. We need to be thinking about how to keep the levee intact, up to date, repaired. So, with your permission, we'd like to move forward. The engineer's ready to come. We'd like to move forward with the approval of the $15,000 to get a real on-the-ground assessment to go along with the Corps assessment.
Mr. Bell.
Thank you. Thank you, Tilda. Thanks for being here. We know how much you care about the Shiloh levee, and so do we. And I appreciate your time to come and join us this morning. I heard Rachel say that Chris Lady has identified an engineer who can come out and do the assessment. So I think we're going to start with that. And if that assessment shows that more work is needed, or what more work is needed, then we'll start planning accordingly. So we're gonna, in this budget, we're gonna start with that assessment.
Thank you. Look forward to that. And we don't have time to meet your May deadline for your final budget to know whether we need to be talking about the $30,000 for the engineering costs or not, but as soon as we know something, we can decide accordingly.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else on this part, on the at all, Rachel?
One more fund, just quickly, the land sale fund. We are finally, for the second year in a row, continuing to operate in the black as we sell properties. We did not have a land sale auction last year just due to staffing constraints, but I am planning for one this year, probably this summer. We have sold a few properties in between land sales though, so there's still some activity going on. We have a couple of big properties that I know we'll have a lot of interest on, and we have some properties that we do need to clean up and are in the process of doing that. So, and this fund also pays for the fire patrol to the Oregon Department of Forestry, the assessment there for our properties, and that's been maintaining pretty constant around $10,000. And that's it I have on my funds at this time. I'll present a little bit after Kevin Jolly's facilities fund, as well as John Spence's communications fund about the radio. But all for now.
All right, thank you. Looks like we've fallen behind now by a couple of minutes here, but we can catch up. So at this time now, before we go into facilities, let's take about 6 or 7 minutes here for a short break, and everybody stand up and do what you need to do, and we'll reconvene in about 7 minutes.